Okay, so I chose to do my speech on the Electoral College. It's been a hot button issue since this year's election because Hillary Clinton's got 2.5 million more votes than Donald Trump does, so she won the popular vote, and Trump still got the presidential election, got the presidency because he got it because of the Electoral College votes. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit and give you some more information as to how it works, why he won, why the Electoral College was enacted, stuff like that. So just to explain a little bit about the Electoral College, it was first, it's a process and not a place. A lot of people think that it's an actual place, and what it is just a gathering of people. So it was first thought of by the Founding Fathers in 1787, and it was written into the Constitution. It consists of 538 different people and 270 people for the majority. So that's why you see on like CNN, everybody's trying to count up to 270. It's like first to 270 wins the presidential election. So that's why you see that. Typically, the states are winner take all. So if you get, the delegates are supposed to vote with a popular vote for the state. So like, if your entire state has more Trump votes than Hillary votes, then all your delegates are supposed to vote for Trump on December 12th or December 13th. So, and then you have the state allotment. So each state has a different different amount of delegates. And the number of delegates that is allotted to a state is decided upon the number of congressional delegates that they have. And then there's one for each member in the House of Representatives. And then there's 2 delegates included for your senators for each state. So the purpose of the Electoral College, back when the Founding Fathers put it into place, was just to prevent the American people from being persuaded by a charismatic tyrant, as Alexander Hamilton said. It was just to prevent the American public from being swayed and manipulated by somebody that was, a smooth talker, or maybe somebody that didn't know what they were doing and still got the job. It was kind of enacted and put in there as a second step to prevent the government from having a rebellious action happen by maybe the majority of the people. So what you see, kind of what happened this last election cycle, is Trump won, and it was partially due to pretty much a rebellious act by the American people, and they were just kind of they were just kind of done with kind of how things were ran, and they didn't like how things were happening, and they didn't feel like their voices were being heard. So a lot of them voted for Trump, and that's kind of one of the reasons that the Electoral College was put in, to prevent kind of situations like that. However, this is like a unique situation, and it happened. So some of the pros of the college is that it protects minority interest. So for states like, smaller states like Wyoming and the Dakotas and stuff like that, like basically most of the Midwestern states, they have lower amounts of delegates, but because they have a lower population, but they're still given an opportunity to make their voices heard, because as a combined effort, they can actually throw an election or stuff like that. And then so it kind of keeps the two-party system alive, because if you have a two-party system, it kind of creates more stability in the whole election cycle. Because if you keep it with 2 parties, it allows for you to have it allows for each party to have general platforms that they can run on. Whereas if you have a bunch of individual smaller parties, then you start getting into each party having their own specific agenda, and they've got like, 2 or 3 things that are really important to them, and then they don't really care about most of the other stuff. So like some of the really important things are kind of a part of both, right now, the Democratic and Republican parties. So they both run on a few key issues, and they're separated by a few key issues, but there are still a couple issues that they're pretty similar on. So like allowing there to just be 2 parties in that general platform, it just keeps it more stable. And it also gives the state more power because it just allows the states to elect their own delegates and their own representatives. So like they have that power. If they don't like who their delegates are, they can change it, individually. Some of the cons of the colleges, or the college is obviously the majority may not always win, as we saw this year, and as we saw in 2000, Bush v. Gore and Trump v. Hillary. Hillary won popular vote by 2.5 million, and she lost the race. The majority may not always win. Some of the time, it's kind of weird because due to some of the smaller states, they have kind of a larger allotment of delegates than they should, because there's a minimum of 3 delegates per state rule. So you can't have any less than 3 delegates per state. And it's kind of weird because you might have a state that's got just a super low population, but they still have 3 delegates. So they still have the ability to kind of sway the presidential election without having all that much weight in terms of population. So also, people don't really like the Electoral College because it kind of puts people off from voting. A lot of people think that the Electoral College is kind of a way for, governmental figures to prevent, the people's choice of vote. So, because you have there's 4 or 5 times in history where the popular vote was more than the Electoral College, and so people sometimes think that because the Electoral College goes against the popular vote, it doesn't really count as a democracy when you have the majority of the people that want this one person, but the other person wins with less votes, but because of the Electoral College. And then one of the main cons of the Electoral College, and this is something that I think is kind of pretty annoying, is you have smaller states, and swing states have the most power. So we're in Ohio, and we were a swing state this year. It was pretty crazy with the amount of televised ads that we had. We were a swing state. We have a lot of delegates, so obviously we get focused on because we could go either Republican or Democrat. Whereas like a state like California, who's been Democrat for like 100 years or plus, they're just Democrats. So they don't pay attention to states like California because they know how they're going to vote. Or they don't pay attention to states like the Dakotas or Midwestern states because they have lower delegate counts. So they're not really too concerned about them because they just don't find them that important because the population is lower. And they won't have that much of an impact. So places like Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Florida even, and like the Carolinas, those are all swing states, so they have a big focus on whether or not they they get the attention. Well, as I currently explained, some of the people, there's an idea with the Electoral College that people don't like, and it's that one vote doesn't actually equal one vote, because if you do the math, when you have bigger states like California, they have 55 delegates allotted to them, and for each delegate, it takes 705,000 individual people's votes to equal one delegate vote in California. And then you have people in Wyoming, and in Wyoming, it comes down to 194,000 people to get one delegate vote. So in some states, people argue that because it takes less people to get a delegate vote in certain states, that is a stronger that's a stronger vote than a state that takes like 700,000. It's just harder to get that. So I actually personally think that this is kind of debatable, because when you think about it, the states like Wyoming can't even compare to a population like California. So in California, you're obviously going to have a lot more people go out to vote, and in Wyoming, you're going to have not as many people, because there aren't as many people in the state. So I kind of think it evens out a little bit, but it's up for debate. When the Electoral College works, it's usually when the popular vote and the college vote aligns to get the same result. Obviously, in the last 5 or 6 elections, you can count both times Obama's been elected, and the first election of George W. Bush. And then a couple examples of it not working is in 2000. The two times it didn't work in my lifetime were in 2000 was W. Bush v. Gore and Hillary versus Trump. And as I previously stated, she won by 2.5 million votes, and Trump got the college. Same thing with Gore and Bush. Bush won the college, Gore won the popular vote. The biggest question currently right now is, should the Electoral College be abolished? After doing a little bit of research, I think the Electoral College contradicts the natural laws of democracy. Democracy is, voted, we vote an individual into office, and a democracy is supposed to be, for the people, and I feel like the Electoral College is a second step to prevent kind of the majority from getting what they want. If the Electoral College also promotes state-to-state segregation, talk a little bit about this. It's like when you've got presidential candidates not paying attention to any of the Midwestern states because their delegate count is low, then those people are going to feel a little left out. They're going to feel a little annoyed. They're not going to be happy about not being focused on during the election. So obviously you're going to have the Midwestern states like the Dakotas and stuff like that. They're going to not feel like, or they're going to feel like their voices are being heard, or anything like that. And then one of the main reasons the Electoral College was actually enacted by the Founding Fathers was because they were afraid that the individual American people wouldn't have enough information on the candidates, so they would make an uninformed choice as to whether or not this person was right for what they believed in, or this person was right what they believed in. So they were concerned that people weren't going to be educated about their decisions, so they enacted the Electoral College just as kind of a buffer, whether or not people elected somebody that was kind of iffy to how they felt America should have been ran. They could kind of overthrow that. So that's not really an issue anymore, because we have social media and we have corporate media. So the only issue that we have right now about information is trying to sort through all the satire that's out there, because there's just tons and tons of untrustworthy and false information about all kinds of candidates and what they're doing. So my conclusion, we've seen the Electoral College work, and we've seen it fail. We've seen it fail twice in our lifetime, at least in my lifetime. We've seen it work all the other times, just by default. The Electoral College was put into place to make sure people could make an educated decision on who they wanted to be their leader, and to make sure the country's interests align with people's interests. So that's about it. My purpose for the speech was to give you information about the Electoral College, to make sure you knew how it operated, kind of the quirks that were involved in it. You make your own decision on whether you think it's necessary or not, or if it's a good idea or not. So I hope that this has helped you better form your opinion on the Electoral College. These are my references.